Quatermass and the Pit, also known as 5 Million Years to Earth in the US, was the third and final instalment of Hammer Studios' Quatermass series. It was released in 1967 and based on the BBC series from the 1950s of the same name. Quatermass and the Pit follows the continuing adventures of Professor Bernard Quatermass, a scientist and ongoing investigator into all things otherworldly and unexplained. When work begins on the London Underground to expand the tunnels, workers make a shocking discovery of the remains of several early humanoid ancestors and a mysterious metal structure. They initially draft in paleontologist Matthew Roney to try and discover from what period these ancestors may have come from, and almost immediately news of the metal craft reaches the government, where it's initially thought to be an unexploded World War II bomb. By chance, Quatermass is discussing his current plans and projects at these offices and offers to accompany the bomb disposal team led by Colonel Breen, played with an icy yet steely precision by Julian Glover.
Military bases.
Of course. The present world situation makes that quite clear. Whoever plants them first will be able to police the Earth with ballistic missiles.
So we must be in the race.
Well, of course.
The ultimate weapon. It always is. Gentlemen, don't you see? We are on the edge of a new dimension of discovery. It's a great chance to leave our vices behind. War, first of all. Not to go out there dragging our hatreds and our frontiers along with us.
Frankly, I'm surprised and disturbed to hear such naive views still being put forward.
Naive? You've lost touch with humanity. You've been shut away too long in this ivory fortress of yours. That's your trouble.
Well, he'll be out of it soon. Colonel Breen is joining you at the rocket group.
What?
At the end of the week. I think you'll agree that someone with experience of military rockets, missiles, will be of considerable value.
I'll fight this right at top level.
When they arrive, it becomes quite apparent that all is not as it would seem, and Quatermass and Roney are quickly embroiled in a mystery that threatens the very fabric of life on Earth as we know it, in a race against time to overthrow not only corruption within the country, but an evil the likes of which has never been seen on Earth, in what is an explosive and atmospheric finale to the trilogy. This is arguably one of the most quintessentially British films that I have ever seen in my lifetime, with barely a minute passing by without a British bobby, a red double-decker bus, a phone box, or a plucky Londoner just popping out of the blue. It's trying so hard to push how British it is that there were moments that it almost bordered on parody, and though while it almost bordered on irritating to me, it never quite crossed that line, and I really found myself charmed in a way by just how British it was attempting to be. The script is adapted from an original plotline by Nigel Neal, and the story really benefits from the improvements in technology and budget, with some very over-the-top action pieces that simply couldn't have been done on a BBC budget for the time. I also really enjoyed the themes played on through this film and its attempt to constantly misstep the audience as to whether there was a scientific or supernatural reason for the events of the film. It's also very interesting to see the dynamic between Quatermass and Breen played out, as Breen refuses to believe that anything scientific or supernatural is taking place, and Quatermass desperately tries to reason with him before it's too late, which I found to be infinitely entertaining. Quatermass and the Pit is the only Hammer Quatermass film presented in full colour, which is brilliant as this film really makes use of it, with set pieces looking very lush and lots of very rich colours contrasting the murky London late 60s backdrop. Direction on this production was handled by Roy Ward Baker, who would have further experience with Hammer in directing films such as Moon 2.0 and The Scars of Dracula, and for the most part the direction on this production is pretty solid. By no means revolutionary, but solid. It's a bit generic in places, relying on traditional directing styles of the 40s and 50s, with only a few genuinely interesting choices, but those interesting choices, coupled with the choice to play it safe, makes it altogether quite a stable piece of film. Though it would have been nice to have seen them experiment a bit more. This direction is aided somewhat by some absolutely stellar performances from the aforementioned Julian Glover, James Donald as Roney, and an outstanding performance from Andrew Keir as the Professor himself. One of the more interesting elements of this direction is the tonal choice to contrast the swinging 60s counterculture with the more steadfast imperial culture that was also prominent in the 60s. The strange mixture of colour and culture really makes the film pop, and it genuinely creates some very nice moments as a direct result. The cinematography is a bit of a mixed bag. At its worst, it's flat and again really too safe, relying heavily on techniques from the 40s and early 50s. It just doesn't make the film jump out at the audience nearly as much as it should. It also has the unfortunate side effect of making some of the practical effects and props seem a bit rubbish in places as well. By contrast, however, there are moments in this film that really offer a good use of depth of field, decent composition, and even a bit of experimentation that wouldn't go amiss in a film from the 70s or 80s. Where it hits, it hits. Where it fails, it's just generic.
Those marks, what could have made them?
Kids playing around made them.
Music for this production was handled by Tristram Carey, who is notable for having not only the tremendous honour of having scored music for the first ever Dalek story, but also for having scored the Daleks' magnum opus, 1965's The Daleks' Master Plan. His compositions are easily up there as some of the most interesting pieces for the time, and Quatermass is no exception. While I wouldn't necessarily clamour to own the soundtrack on this one, it's definitely very interesting and certainly adds to the film's wonderfully creepy atmosphere. One of the biggest things that struck me with watching this film, and it may just be me overthinking at this point, was just how much it seemed to have inspired classic series Doctor Who, particularly from the middle of Patrick Troughton's run through to the Jon Pertwee era, with several stories between 1968 and 1973 seemingly either inspired by or copied wholesale from this film, including The Web of Fear, The Ambassadors of Death, The Claws of Axos, and The Demons, to name a few. In fact, having watched this film now, I do feel that the production staff at Doctor Who at the time could have been accused of being a little bit derivative. Then again, if you're going to steal ideas, steal from the best. Quatermass in the Pit was released on DVD in 2006 as part of the Ultimate Hammer Horror Collection, and was later released that same year as a standalone DVD. Both appear to still be in print and available on various websites at the time of recording. There's also been an international Blu-ray release, though information about this release is a little bit scarce. The film is quintessential proper science fiction at its best, being zippy, well written and punchy in such a way that was quite ahead of its time. For those used to modern pacing and storytelling, this film could be seen as a little bit of a slow burner, but if you have an understanding and patience of pacing of 20th century cinema, this is an absolutely essential science fiction classic and definitely recommended.